Winnie and I had been writing the show and working on it with Mark Platt for, I guess, a couple of years. And we had done at least 3 readings kind of on our own. And we had sort of reached the point where we felt we couldn't go further without bringing a director into the project. For various reasons, Joe seemed like a really good idea.
I just thought with Joe that he was the right person tonally more than anything. He had never done anything of this size before. What I thought the trickiest thing wasn't the size, but was the difficult tone. Sometimes it could be very moving and serious, and sometimes it was very pop and light and funny. And it turns on a dime in this show. And to navigate that is very, very hard, and I really thought he could.
One of the jobs of a director is to ask questions. One of the jobs of the director is to stand in for the audience until they get there. So I always think of it like after each day of rehearsal, I try to erase what I learned that day so I show up the next day with fresh eyes. What am I seeing? What am I responding to? As an audience member, if I know nothing about this, is it clear? Is it resonating? Does it make sense?
That first year, from, I guess, summer of 2001 to summer of 2002, it really was just script, script, script. And then, starting in summer 2002, he had to split his brain and think about still continuing making the script everything it needed to be with the authors, and also think about, well, how will I stage these things?
When you start this process of rehearsing a play or a musical, the best version of it is that you're all on a fact-finding mission together. I, as the director, will be working with the actors on the scenes, the book scenes. The musical director would be teaching someone else music. And then you gradually assemble all of those elements together, and the writers are in the room and they're making little changes, sometimes big changes. You can rearrange scenes, and there would be contributions and questions from the other designers and the other people on the team, and saying, how does this happen? What if I did this? It starts to gel that way.
Joe had a very clear sense of the world and was able to move decisively, beautifully decisively, throughout all of our conversations.
It's like whittling a stick of wood, and suddenly a form starts to take shape. The way that I feel about rehearsals is the best idea wins. It doesn't have to be my way. It really doesn't. And I hopefully try to create an atmosphere in the room where people feel safe and comfortable enough to know that their contribution is really welcome.
Joe is open to talking about things with the cast, with the creative team. He doesn't say, I have a vision in my head, and what is in my head is what's going to go on stage. He lets people, the actors, make it their own. He is truly collaborative.
You have to allow people who work very differently to achieve the same goal in their own time. And so you have to inspire knowing ultimately where you're headed.
Kiss me goodbye, I'm defying gravity, and you can't pull me down.
I'm extremely proud of being a part of the creation of a character, the character of Elphaba, who has real significance in a lot of people's lives and represents a kind of empathy that I don't think exists in the world right now. It's touched a chord with people all around the world. Something that we didn't anticipate happening was, on the first preview, when Idina Menzel made her first entrance as Elphaba, and she rushes out from the clock and runs down center stage, this young girl with an incredibly hopeful, open face. The audience broke into spontaneous applause.
And they have it almost every performance since, in America and around the world, because they understood in a moment that this character was nothing like what they imagined.
I think it was this wave of passion and love and affection for the Wicked Witch of the West. And I think none of us could have anticipated that.
And that was the moment that we all looked at each other and said, oh my God. And you can't know that's going to happen, even a moment like that in rehearsal. You need the audience to tell you that.
And it was a crucial bit of information, because you thought, oh, they love her. I am proud to be one of her caretakers. And I love that she's out in the world, giving people strength and confidence and an ability to believe in themselves. I think that's an extraordinary thing to put out in the world, that it does have a profound effect on people's lives.
I think when one does an adaptation, you have to be careful not to fall into the trap of doing too faithful an adaptation.
Immerse yourself in the source material and understand it and understand its essence. And once you've done that, then it's throw it out and now go where you feel it needs to go.
You have to let it be different and be alive, you know? You don't really know what's gonna happen. And a lot of writing anything is being able to have questions and not have answers yet, and being willing to wait till they come.
Winnie and Stephen and I sat down and began to talk about what a stage musical could be. And Stephen already had some very specific melodies and songs and tones in his mind, which was very useful because music is the anchor in a musical, of course. It anchors character if it's done right, it anchors story, and so that was a good guide for us.
We would have long conversations, and we were basically both almost as like a fishing expedition, where we're really kind of picking from the novel things that leaped out at us, things that we felt were going to want to be staged, that we wanted to see. I think we really talked out the whole show and tried to see, are you imagining what I'm imagining? Interestingly, I have, early outlines that we created together.
Outline after outline after outline of story points. And here are the moments we want to musicalize. Here's where a song goes, and it would shift and it would change.
We were very fortunate because we had Gregory Maguire's permission to interpret the novel the way we saw fit. It evolved organically out of the material. And of course, I have to credit Gregory Maguire because he had this brilliant idea, which is in his novel, that the Wicked Witch of the West and Glinda the Good Witch were roommates in college. That's amazing. These two women, their friendship is center stage. Women, we have friendships that are very big in our lives. I mean, our friendships are very intense, and I think to see it portrayed on stage is kind of blew people away. When we started to understand that their friendship was going to be front and center, and that Glinda was going to be a very important character, and in a way, that made us understand that she could be our way into the show.
Glinda sort of got revealed to me by the way Winnie wrote her, and I think Elphaba took more and more shape for Winnie by the way the songs were developing.
Glinda and Elphaba, their friendship and what they mean to each other is the heart of our show, and it's a lot of our plot.
The more that Winnie wrote the relationship, the more compelling it became. The bonding of the girls, we discovered, was the scene that precedes the song Popular. After Elphaba, who never danced in her life, is making a fool of herself, Glinda gives Elphaba a gift with no words. She follows Elphaba's dance and turns something ragged and silly into something beautiful. That moment of bonding, actually, is a wonderful marriage of storytelling, of music, of musical staging, and of direction.
They've just been to their first party together. They've been enemies. Now they've bonded. And that's really the moment in the show when you go, oh my goodness, these two, Elphaba and Glinda, are going to be real friends. Then Popular comes so beautifully out of that and is really set up. And that's a lot of what musical writing is about for the book writer. You want to be giving those songs a platform. You want to be bringing us to the point where it makes real emotional sense for them to sing.
It's all about popular. It's not about aptitude. It's the way you're viewed, so it's very shrewd to be very, very popular, like me. This is never gonna work.
A lot of writing is being stuck in a mystery where you don't know exactly what's going on, because no one's ever written this before. I mean, yes, Gregory Maguire had written it, but we were jumping off from that. We were going to do our version of Gregory Maguire's book. And it wasn't going to be a book. It was going to be on stage.
You'll be popular, just not quite as popular as me. You'll be popular, just not quite as popular as me.
Dominic sent me an email. I think it was either an email or a letter, probably an email, when he had first graduated, saying that he was interested in becoming a musical director and sent me some credentials, etc. And I met with him and thought he was talented, and I kind of suggested some things he could do to help get started in the business.
And he spoke that day about a new little show he was working on called Wicked. I ended up going out on the national tour of Wicked. So kind of came full circle from that first meeting as a young kid coming to New York, meeting this famous composer, and having now worked for him for about 6 years on one of his biggest shows.
It's just great that he's wound up being our musical director here.
A music director basically takes a composer's work and communicates it to the actors, and also works with the director and the choreographer and the stage managers and the orchestrators and the arrangers and everyone who has anything to do with the music.
As the conductor at Wicked, my job is in 3 parts. I maintain the show, I rehearse the show, and I conduct the show. The easiest part is the conducting the show. It's me standing up in front of the orchestra for 3 hours every night. The more complicated thing is the maintaining of the show, which is I'm responsible for pretty much anything you hear that has music. The underscores, are they too loud or too soft, the songs, the dynamics, the singing, and then the rehearsing of the show is just preparing new cast members who come in to join our company. I think conducting Wicked is different from other musicals because we combine a rhythm section, a rock band kind of, which is to my right in the pit, guitars, bass, piano, drums, percussion, with kind of a symphony orchestra, which is to the other side. A full string section, woodwinds, brass, a full orchestra of 24. It's a balancing act to bring those 2 entities together. The rhythm section players, the bass, guitar, drums, they respond a little differently to a conductor than does a string section. And so a lot of it is getting the orchestra to play together and with me and with the show. Wicked is full of pratfalls and challenges for the conductor. One of the more difficult things we do during the show is a vamp, which is a single bar of music that we repeat over and over again in the orchestra, waiting for an actor to give a certain cue, and then we all jump together to a new bar of music. And there's a number of difficult vamp sections that exist in Wicked. Those can be a big challenge just because you're coordinating with the actors and communicating with the orchestra at the same time. Just being a great musician is probably not enough to be a great music director. Easily 50% of what we do is personal skills and dealing well with others, not just the orchestra, the cast, especially in a show like Wicked with these 2 gigantic roles for these 2 women. A big part of my job is supporting them and making them feel comfortable on stage and knowing that someone's looking out for them, and if they're feeling a little vocally tired, meeting with them before the show and helping warm them up and all that kind of thing. So there's a solid part of our job, which is friend and confidant and supporter.
It's not just a guy there waving a stick. The conductor basically drives the whole show.
I do a quick stretch, both in my office before I head out and once I get up on the podium, because I do wave my arms around for 3 hours straight. I usually say hi to some of the people who have won the lottery and are sitting directly behind me. I always check in with the stage managers too at the top of the show. They make sure I'm ready and the orchestra's there. And then we start the show.
Doing a musical requires a whole team to deal with the music. Not just myself who writes the songs, but an orchestrator to translate them for the orchestra.
Before it goes on stage, it wants a production value, just as all the other elements in the show do. And so the orchestrator adds to the original music by assigning instruments to the melody that Stephen has written on the piano.
Songs that are more orchestral, Bill just did, basically from the piano parts. But in some cases where there's a more pop drive, my conductor, Stephen Aremus, and one of the arrangers, Alex Lackamore, did kind of pop arrangements of the songs.
Stephen always said that he never wanted it to, he always wanted it to be kind of this hybrid of, many different elements to kind of create its own world. And so much of what we do in the orchestration is, weds, certain pop elements, certain kind of old-time musical theater elements, certain orchestral, symphonic elements, and even operatic elements, and bring them all together to create this very vivid musical world that we inhabit.
Bill would do what we would call in the record business sweetening. He would build instruments around that pop arrangement.
I honestly don't know how it works. I just know I love to do it.
I feel all of us working together came up with a pretty unified approach to the score.
It's a whole process that starts with, once Stephen writes it, it then goes to the orchestrator, who then, blows it up for all of the other instruments and hand writes on score paper all of the different parts that become this, this big orchestration, and then it goes to a copyist.
The people who actually do the grunt work, if I may use that word, and I don't mean it pejoratively, I mean it actually with great admiration.
We actually prepare the physical music that's on the orchestra stand. We get that score and we have to extract out the parts for all the individual players in the orchestra. Is there enough time for the violin player to turn his page and still make the next passage? I mean, we have to know what all the instruments are capable of and make sure that the music is friendly to them.
Lately, I've been saying that one of the things that we do is we're like the accountants of sharps and flats. We dot every musical I and cross every musical T. We're taking the raw form of the music in a score that's been orchestrated, so it's finished, but no one has a part to play yet. And now we're using common practice, performance practices, to put it onto paper in the way that's familiar to play, that reduces hands raised at a rehearsal.
We create a musical map to help the player get from the beginning of the piece to the end of the piece at the same time as all the other players in the orchestra.
There's a big team that it takes to put on a musical. It's not just one guy, sort of scribbling out some tunes and saying, oh, why doesn't the flute play that?
Oh, very clearly this was a collaboration that I had never experienced before. It was promising, challenging, fascinating, engaging, not to say triumphant.
Hi, I'm Anthony Galdi. Welcome to the music edition of Behind the Emerald Curtain. Today we'll visit an important member of the orchestra, the percussionist. We'll learn why specific sounds are used, how they're woven into the musical tapestry of the show, and what it takes to perform it on a nightly basis. Now let's go below the stage for a look at the hard-hitting percussion of Wicked.
I had worked with Andy Jones as a percussionist. I knew him through friends, and Andy was Chicago-based. And I actually brought him to New York, or asked him if he would come to New York to do Wicked. He was the most creative percussionist that I had ever encountered, and therefore I wanted him to be part of the putting together the music of the show if I could get him to do it.
I've been with Wicked since the beginning of the show, and throughout rehearsals, Stephen Schwartz, Stephen Aremus, Jim Abbott, Bill Brohn, and I all worked together. Schwartz really wanted Oz to have this kind of sparkle and exotic sound that doesn't exist anywhere else.
We're working in a fantasy drama which requires several layers of removal from the reality. The percussion does have very specific thematic ideas in it. It must follow the characterization and the drama very closely.
Glinda has a lot of the high and sparkly sounds, bells and sleigh bells and triangles. Elphaba uses a lot more earthy sounds. There's some rattles and nut shakers and some African percussion, and I use instruments that kind of ground her and kind of maybe Native American or maybe African culture to make her feel more kind of earthy and shaman-like.
It insinuates itself in the listener's mind, I think, and helps operate in the drama, such as portraying the monkeys with the wood.
This was actually Bill Brown's idea. He wanted a collection of high wood sounds for the monkeys. You can kind of hear their hands or that tapping as they run around in the trees.
Andy is, he really thinks about telling a story with percussion. Some of the instruments are things that he makes.
This is a pair of bird flappers that myself and a friend actually developed.
Some of the things are standard instruments, but he uses them in a different way.
The percussion at Wicked is in its own room, separate from the rest of the orchestra. Part of the reason is there's 59 instruments and it takes up a lot of real estate. I would have probably taken up a quarter of the pit. But another reason is just the sounds. You put those in a pit, you might get the big sounds, you're probably not going to get the little sounds. Whereas in isolation, in my own separate room, they can really focus in on the smaller sounds and not lose that. They have 6 mics placed throughout, but to close mic the show, I wear a hat that has a microphone on the front, and so I can do a shaker and like fade out, or if I want something a little louder, I'll lean closer to it. It's strung to the ceiling, and it travels all around the setup, and whatever I'm looking at or playing picks up. I have a video of the conductor, and there's 3 TVs in the room so that any direction I face, I can see him. Before the show, if there's a question or whatever, I have a microphone, a direct line to him. He looks to the left for the orchestral side, he looks to the right for the rhythm side, but for the harp and myself, I can kind of tell that when he looks straight into the camera and he's giving me a note or a direction or something like that.
The work with Steve and Andy, might I add, was particularly fruitful, I think.
I think I have the arsenal of standard orchestral percussion or instruments that are used on a lot of shows. But then I think I have some kind of wild instruments that are really not normally used in theater, but really bring out an exotic kind of edge to Oz.
Essentially, I just asked him to be creative and participate, and he did, obviously, brilliantly.
My concept of sound design is we're doing a live show, and our strength lies in the relationship between the performer and the audience.
Tonia's goal has generally been to make the show, bring the show out to the audience as best as possible without drawing too much attention to the sound.
My first job is to tell the story, and if the orchestra is playing louder than the lyrics, then I'm not doing my job.
Say to me, I see who you truly are, a girl on whom I can rely, and that's how we'll begin, the wizard and I. Yes.
What we do is we put everybody in microphone. At Wicked, we have approximately 40 wireless microphones on all the cast.
The microphone goes under the costume in an elastic belt pack underneath all the costumes, and then comes up and sits literally here or here in the middle of the forehead, and they usually use some kind of medical tape to hold it on the back of the ear or on the back of the neck.
Not only do we control whose microphone is on when they're actually saying a line, but we control how it sounds and how loud it is.
I try to make it sound like the voices are coming from the stage and the orchestra is coming from the orchestra.
So we're perfect together, born to be forever, dancing through life.
We have a lot of speakers, but that's really good because then we don't have to really get huge and loud all the time. You have to still have a dynamic. And Tony's done a great job with, it's a really nice system in that respect.
Jordan Pankin and I, our sound mixer on Wicked, have worked together for a really long time. And with Jordan, I don't need to spend a lot of time at the console. I can spend more time with the director, more time walking around the house, because he knows exactly what I want.
I've worked with Tony long enough to know where he likes that balance and where he likes the orchestra to sit in relationship to the room and to the vocals. And you kind of know, as a sound man, what's too much and what's too little.
The sound mixer performs every night, and there's no break. There's no break between mixing a musical number and mixing a book scene. Is very similar to the operator because they're bringing one mic up at a time. Every line has one microphone on. And so the sound mixer has to know the script, they have to know the orchestration, they have to know the orchestra, they have to know the orchestra cues.
When Chistery's Wings come out, wow. It's hard because you're going, oh my God, you did it. No, I didn't, oh my God.
Chistery, are you all right? Why can't he answer me? You did it! You actually... No, he's in pain! Quick, how do I reverse it? You can't.
And
What?
you're like, oh, geez, come on, keep going, just keep going. And you can't throw everything up. That's not how we do it, that's not how I do it.
When you do a show for a long time and you get to know performers, you work together.
Someone said, it's really nice, you breathe with us. And I said, you're right, because if I didn't, nobody would understand what you're saying. And so you really have to kind of know that when they go, well, leave the mic up a little bit, because they're doing that for a reason.
And there are little tricks we do. Very often, to get a word really clear, right at the end of a word, we'll ride up really fast and get the T at the end of the word, or a K at the end of the word, or an S.
You see, I am Galinda Upland. Of the Upper Uplands. I've applied to your sorcery seminar. Perhaps you recall my entrance essay, magic wands. Need they have a point?
And actors are actors. They're going to react to what they're getting from the audience, what they're getting from the new person, from an understudy, and so suddenly the rhythm changes. So it's never the same show. It's a different reaction from the audience. It's a different night for me, it's a different night for them.
I love it when somebody I know is at the show, because I'm feeling it again for the first time through them. I also love to go down on the side of the theater and just sort of hang out towards the end of Act One to watch the audience when she goes up and Defying Gravity. It's always fun to just watch everybody go.
In theater, to have them really listen and to just you totally grab them in, that's what I like being part of. When I'm doing the right thing, and when the mix is right, then, I did my part.
There will always be a person in the front of the theater mixing a Broadway musical, because you can't do it. It's like acting. You've got to have a person there because they're doing it as it's happening. It's theater, it's live. And that's what we do best.
The thing with the show that's really interesting for me was finding different vocabulary and stylistic ways of moving the characters.
It all has to be inspired and informed by the music and by the story. That's how Wayne works, definitely.
I think each choreographer is different, however they approach choreographing a musical. For me, I need to have a reason to dance. So I go from that avenue. I go from the storytelling kind of physical part of it, as opposed to just doing dance steps.
You kind of have to start there before you can even start focusing on vocabulary or any sort of style or feel or aesthetic that you want to kind of bring to the table. And then we throw ourselves around the room for several weeks until we feel okay about about a skeleton, and then it always develops and changes once you get the bodies. More of the show is musically staged than is choreographed necessarily.
Musical staging is all of the movement in the show. From the downbeat of the music, whatever they're doing as characters, that's all choreographed in a musically staged way. It's not a number where they're doing a kick line, but it's all choreographed. Jumping and moving around, that seems really natural and they're really excited and having a great old time. That's all musical staging.
Clothes are fleeting, clothes are glancing when you're dancing
I've come up with a lot of pre-production work and steps and vocabulary, and then a lot of the stuff that's on that stage is really developed by the individual dancer or personality. I'll give you an example. So, Nicky Dick, I knew that there was a spell. I wanted it to be completely crazy and sporadic.
The analogies that we give them, your foot is nailed to the ground and you can't get it off, and now you're getting electric shocks running through your body.
It was something that was kind of taking them off center, as opposed to them going and making up choreography.
What's happening?
I don't know, I got mad and...
All right, just don't move. And don't get mad at me. Well, you coming?
I feel like a lot of my job is not only maintaining the integrity of the choreography and the musical staging and the movement, but kind of keeping them inspired and honest and fresh as much as possible.
It's not about being clean, like I said, it's just about being together in a moment, whether it's a physical thing or a focus thing or whatever. It's those pointed things that when you guys click into that together, then it's like, forget it. Then it really elevates the story that much more.
I always have bi-weekly note sessions scheduled with the ensemble where we check in with them. If I'm traveling to another company, one of the tours, the dance captain sometimes will still give those sessions.
My name's Jonathan Warren, and I'm the dance captain in the Broadway company of Wicked. I'm the guy who, when a new cast member comes in, I'm the guy that they're working with. So it's me and that person inside a studio for 2 weeks usually. I'm giving them all their choreography and I'm trying to help them find what works best for them. Each actor is really important in creating this world. So for me, it's really about finding that individuality in each person, nurturing that, and encouraging them to bring that onto the stage that first night out and throughout their time there.
I feel dancers have to be brilliant actors. And if they know what the situation is, and they know what's expected of them, and they know what's going on, then their bodies will take over, and they have to tell the story.
Sharing one wonderful
The wizard will see you now!
Makeup is the area that really is the most personal to an actor. Makeup, then hair, then their body. So what they see all the time is their own face in the mirror. So the relationship between the actor and Joe Delude, the makeup designer, is truly one of trust.
I think when you initially start working with an actor, I go about by asking them, okay, what do you see for this character? And then I can work with what they think, but also what I know I need to do for the makeup as well.
Sometimes they are just made more beautiful than they are. Sometimes they're made into somebody who is not the person you think you want to see when you look in the mirror. I think that when you look at the makeup of Wicked, there are moments of extreme, but mostly you're looking at natural, beautiful, young people in shiz to some of the more extreme makeup of the animals.
The animals were a little tough in the beginning because we really weren't sure what direction we wanted to go in. We didn't want to make it a literal animal, but it would be different than what everybody else looks like.
There is makeup that defines character all through the show. The mob, which is the ensemble in the opening, they actually come back again in Act 2 in a much more menacing capacity.
You know, we kind of make them look kind of scary and like they've been up all night, so they get dark circles or like bruised cheeks, and then they take, the girls take off their lipstick so they look pale.
Same pitchfork-wielding mob in Witch Hunters are all the same people that are creating Emerald City. They transform themselves with costumes, with wigs, with hats. They change their makeup. They are transformed into these high-class couture denizens of the Emerald City.
Becoming Elphaba is about transforming.
The present makeup for Elphaba is a product from MAC called Chroma Cake. It's almost like a watercolor. So you just add a little bit of water to it, and we use these wide Japanese brushes, and we paint it on.
And then sculpting the face, finding how to develop a color palette that defines the eyes, the cheekbones, the mouth.
We use, some normal colors like a beige and brown and black, but then we also use purple for the contour because the purple and the green contrast really nicely. And the whole point was to make it look like skin, not look like makeup.
To watch Joe DeLue do it for the first time is pretty exciting. Through the course of the show, there's constant touch-ups of the makeup, but also because she is changing as a character. She accelerates into being the Wicked Witch of the West of Act 2.
We sort of do what we call our glam Elphaba makeup. It gets darker, it gets more dramatic. We, wing out the eyes so that, it comes out to here, and she, elongate her eyebrows and contour her a little bit more. She gets a darker lipstick. Makeup-wise, you can see a change from her character, from simple, basic, not wearing any makeup per se, and then going into something that is much more dramatic and like she's come into her own now. A lot of times when I get makeup students who will email me and ask me questions, it makes me realize how amazing the show was and how groundbreaking it was in so many ways.
Wigs are so funny because we are all, as human beings, used to dealing with hair on our bodies and treating it in a certain way. The wig is an object. Tom Watson is a great, great hair designer and a wig maker. So his wigs, he wants people to treat them like their own hair. Once we've made the decision of what the wig is going to be, we know who is going to be wearing the wig, how the hair is actually going to move on the head, whether or not there's color change, what the color is going to be. Then it's given over to the hands of a wig maker.
Susan designed the costumes to be asymmetrical. A lot of the hair is also asymmetrical, so you'll see there'll be like a single-sided horn in a wig that just goes up to the right side and with a hat on the other side, so it's completely asymmetrical. All of Susan Hilferty's original sketches included sketches of the hair.
We look at the sketch, we try to understand the language that we are going to be using. The conversation has to do with the color of hair, the shape of the styles of hair. This conversation is about blending all of the elements together.
Whenever any new actor comes into the show, their hair is addressed almost immediately. There's always, for every actor, even if they're wigged for the entire show, a conversation between the wig supervisor and myself about color, texture, length.
Our job, as soon as we get our hands on the actor, is to measure them in every conceivable way. Most people for the first time are shocked that there are so many measurements to be had. To understand how to make the wig, you have to have literally, it's almost like a tracing of the head.
We do a mold of their head, use basically plastic bag and tape, and then we take that plastic bag mold that we just did, we stuff it out to meet certain measurements. So basically, we wind up having a duplicate of their head in the studio, and then we can build the wig on that duplicate. When we make the mold of the head, we start by prepping the head so that we get the hair as flat as we possibly can, and then we put the plastic bag over their head and start taping it down so that we basically have covered the entire head with tape, which that forms the actual shape. And then we use a Sharpie to outline exactly where the hairline is of each person. So, if they have a widow's peak, we can capture that. If they have a receded hairline, we capture that. Then after that, we measure. We take a series of various measurements, circumference across the back of the nape, from the front center to the back, over the top of the head, and so forth. And we take those measurements so that we know how we have to stuff that mold out later. We have something to compare it to.
It's literally the roadmap of a person's head.
Once we have the head wrap, we take the head wrap and we find a canvas block whose circumference is about the same as the circumference of the actor or actress's head. Then we place the mold onto the block, tape it down, and then we actually make a series of cuts into that mold and start stuffing it with polyfill. And that allows us to basically stuff the head out until we get to the exact measurements that we've taken before. And that gives us the duplicate of their head. There's two ways we can make a wig. Either we start with nothing and we build a foundation, we build everything, or we start with an existing wig and rip off the front, rip off the top, and just customize it to the person. And then it takes about anywhere from 15 to 40 hours to build the wig. Most of that process is putting hair in a cap. Then we start building the wig from scratch that very day.
Every hair is put on by a craftsperson. Every hair is put into that wig.
Using methods that have been around for 300, 400 years now. So nothing's changed about wig making in the past, 3 centuries. On Wicked Broadway, there's approximately 120 wigs, I include facial hair in that as well, which is much larger than most shows. Other productions of Wicked have about 109, 110 wigs as well. So right now there's 7 productions in the world. That's about 800 wigs just for Wicked alone.
It's impossible to talk about a costume if you're not talking about the hair too. The hair design for the show is intrinsic to the design of the costume. It's all of a piece. The wigs are really what pull it all together. For all of the time and energy we spend making the clothes, and they are exceptional, and the clothes, the shoes, the gloves, the hats, it's not a costume. It is not finished. They are not in character until they have a wig on.
In creating a world like Wicked, we are creating a culture that nobody has ever seen. The creation of animals was an important part of it. The monkeys, for instance. What are the monkeys? Are the monkeys soldiers? Are they primitive? What is the idea of wings on monkeys? I wanted them to feel human, but at the same time be monkeys. It started just with color, but then it really moved into what I call the musculature.
The monkey unitards are a really complex process. They take a lot of hands to create. They start out as flat fabric that's painted by the painters and dyers, and that's a multi-stage process that involves resists and custom dye colors. And then it's basted together into a monkey unitard, and that's what we fit. And then it's all taken back apart and adjusted and put back together. And then the painters go in again to finish it off and smooth the transition from the padded muscles to the painted unitard. And then it's delivered that way.
At that point, I brought in a mask designer who helped me fabricate a number of shapes that we could look at and determine whether or not it was too mean, too nice, too hard. I had drawn and knew that I wanted a really spiky look. There was a look to these that wasn't mechanical, but that wasn't soft. I was looking at bat wings because I didn't want feathers. I wanted something that felt like it came from their skin. The physicality of the monkey became something that was really important, so it was working with the choreographer to look at how monkeys move that was going to create the language of monkeys. I would say the most nail-biting moment for me in the whole process was waiting for the moment when Chistery was going to sprout his wings for the first time.
The process for creating Chistery's growing wings was long and difficult. It required a lot of artisans traveling back and forth across the country, many hours of fittings with a very patient actor to work out the logistics of how to make wings sprout from an actor's back. Underneath the monkey unitard, they wear a wing harness that you don't see it, but it protrudes through the back of the unitard. It's got hooks that the wing plate hooks onto, and the actor can't do it themselves. The wardrobe actually has to set the wing harness onto the back plate and screw it into place, and that happens often in a quick change backstage.
They look delicate because the fabric is mesh, which means light comes through it, and you see the painting as a transparency. The ribs on them, most of the ribs are plastic boning. The ends are solid steel. We have someone working on them all the time, so because they are mechanical things, they have mechanical problems.
Working the wings can be tricky sometimes, climbing on the gear walls and jumping off the towers and just seeing how that would feel, and like running and jumping and turning with the wings open, because it's a little different. You actually do catch a little bit of air, so you kind of have to, like when you jump, you kind of have to use a little more force than you normally would, because if you don't, you won't go anywhere.
We knew we had been able to successfully create a creature that was intact from his tail to his hands to his feet to the look of his face. And then we were also able to deploy his wings on cue, on time, which is a terrible, terrible moment because everybody's looking at him in pain. Everybody wants those wings to come. They want to believe that it's a monkey who is growing wings. So that, I think, was a real moment of triumph for us all. One of my favorite design experiences when I was designing Wicked was the clothes for Madame Marble. She's an incredible character. She's slightly zany, and I knew I had to take her from the moment that she's an academic. She's a teacher at Shiz University, and then she traveled from there to the end when she becomes almost a wicked figure in the world of Oz. And we have had Madame Marbles of all shapes and sizes, tall, short, wide, slender. They've run the gamut. And I have to say that every one of them has believed that they look best in these clothes, which is something, I couldn't ask for anything better than that. But it takes an Amanda and Alice who are working with me to understand my eye for me to know and believe that they can transform the actor comfortably, that so they believe that they are their character, but also maintaining the things that are essential for the Morrible look.
We're putting in a new Morrible into the show, Kathy Fitzgerald. Morribles have 4 distinct looks in the show. She spends most of Act 1 in what we call shiz. It's the rust-colored dress that she wears. She changes very briefly in the Wizard's Chamber to what we call Emerald City. It's a beautiful dress that takes a lot of man-hours to make, and it sees very little stage time, but we love it nonetheless. She starts Act 2 in her 3rd costume, which is called Engagement. And then her last one, we call it Seized, because she's in it when she's seized by the guards, and so our nickname for that costume is Seized. At Barbara Matera's, where we're doing these new Morrible costumes, Coco is, again, another artist who brings so much to the table.
Since 1968, Barbara Matera Limited has provided costumes to Broadway, ballet, concert tours, and feature films. The shop has recently been given the task, yet again, of building a new set of costumes for a new Madame Morrible.
When you first do a costume, you're not always familiar with what that character is. It's kind of an unusual situation to have this many years to become familiar with my character. And I really feel like she's mine. I know what it's supposed to look like. I know when I look at her, no matter who she is, where to make those adjustments to create that character. And that's something that you only develop when you've done a character for a very long time. Every once in a while, there's been a time when we've had a space with no Morribles. And it's amazing how quickly you forget all these details. We do a lot of work in this shop, and the stitchers, typically on a show like this, you'll use a similar stitcher to make a costume. But I also keep what we call a work Bible, and in that I record every aspect of the costume. And it's very important because if a stitcher is out or if I change assistants, you have to have some resource. So over the years, I've developed a very fat Wicked Bible because they're so elaborate. When a Morrible costume order comes in, you kind of have to hope that you're not too busy. Generally, we need 6 weeks from start to finish. And under some circumstances, even then, it's hard to get the garment done in 6 weeks. Typically, it means that all 4 costumes have to be worked on at the same time, which is why we train specific stitchers to work on specific costumes.
They're very specialized crafts, and only a few people can do them, and I think the people that do them best are here. We're incredibly fortunate to have the people that we have working on this show.
When an actor joins a show that's already running, you get 2 weeks to learn the part and 1 day to put it on stage. That's called a put-in rehearsal.
I'm an actor who likes to work with the costumes, so I'd love to have them first day rehearsal because it changes how you feel. When you only get 1 shot in a replacement, you have 1 day that you're feeling your own costumes for the first time before an audience, and yes, it absolutely changes everything because, you know, everyone acts differently if they're in their own costume. They look like the person that they're portraying on stage. So it changes my world 110%. Absolutely changes it. Absolutely. You're dealing with all the props that are there, and you know, everybody walks differently and stands differently in rehearsal clothes than they do in a period piece. So it absolutely changes your life, your world.
That's a very different thing to wear that dress as opposed to wearing sweatpants and sneakers that you've been wearing in rehearsal. They sort of get it when they put the clothes on, and especially with the Morribles. Kathy Fitzgerald did it today. She puts the clothes on and sort of stands a little straighter and starts to talk a different way. You know, it's like those clothes just make you become a different person than you are.
It's essential for me to have really trusted associates, what I would call companions in this process. I knew I had to go to Barbara Matera Limited because I knew Polly, who works there, and I know that she's a genius when it comes to helping make decisions about all of the things that you can work with when you're doing beading on a dress.
Here at Barbara Matera, I'm the beading designer, and I also manage the bead room, which means I have to make sure that the work that needs beading gets in there in a timely fashion and then gets out of there in a timely fashion.
The beading has to go in a very specific pattern, in a very specific place, with a specific choice of each bead. You can't believe how many decisions have to be made in every beading pattern.
When Susan came in, we were very excited about doing this show. A lot of us had read the book. We just knew it was going to be a fun experience. What happens with a designer is they bring us their sketches first. And then we have a meeting with them to discuss what does this sketch mean.
Polly has a really great eye to interpret an idea that I have.
I do a sample first, and then I'll draw that on the fabric that we're going to use.
We'll draw in pencil where the beading is going to go on the garment.
Whatever that design is, I take the pattern and draw all that. That could take 7 hours to do. And then we'll put that in the bead room.
We literally will lay out all the beads and start to choose, I think this is the right quality. Polly has a great eye because she can then understand what I'm talking about and guide me to all of the right choices.
The beading has a whole language all its own. Do you want an empty stitch? Okay, what's that mean? It means a bead and an empty stitch and a bead. So the beads are spread out a little bit, so it's lighter. No empty stitch, they're one right after another, which makes a strong line if that's what you want. Pull back is when they use this type of bead, which is a number 2 bugle, and they line them up like that, side by side. In order to bead it, it has to be stretched on a frame to keep it taut, and then the frame is set, in our case, on sawhorses, so they can get their hand under and above the fabric, both.
It's done one bead at a time. There's no hot glue involved. One bead at a time is sewn on.
When you do beading on a costume, I think that it adds a whole dimension that it wouldn't have if it didn't have the beading. I like a mixture of things put together. Some are dull, some are shiny, some are cut with straight edges, some are rounded. Even though they're tiny, it does make a difference. And I feel that while we can't see from the audience, you can't see all that. You get a feel of it. It makes an impression.
I feel very lucky that we've been able to meet and work with artisans who have the skill and experience to continue this art form. It's an amazing process. Alice Gilbert is an amazing wardrobe supervisor. I'd worked with her before. I had to have her on Wicked because I thought she's the only person who can understand the complexities of a monkey costume and a mask, all the way to the most delicate beaded piece of chiffon.
I think in many ways Susan was happy because I had done a lot of shows over a long period of time, and so there were things that I could have input about in choices that you might want to make it easier to maintain the show over a long period of time. What the fabric is, what the texture is going to be.
Alice takes every single piece of fabric that I choose, and in something like Wicked, there's over 2,000 pieces of fabric. She takes her nail and she digs into it to make sure that it is going to survive. For her, survival is the key. I call it the Alice test. These clothes do 8 performances a week. They live through sweat, water, fire, performance after performance, and they have to stay as beautiful from the very first day to the last day that they have on stage. It's an unbelievably difficult life for this costume.
For wardrobe to do the show, there are 12 dressers, plus myself and the assistant, and we have 4 to 8 people doing day work, depending on the day of the week.
They are there before, during, and after every performance, doing a kind of triage, whether or not it's a tear or a dropped bead or a loose connection. The whole team of people are prepared at any moment to jump in to fix something.
Who the costume would see through the day, if it were a single costume, there'll be 4 or 5 people dealing in the world of any individual costume over a day's period. In the morning, early would come the day workers. If there had been something that had happened to it the night before, we have some day workers who will burrow into the costume because some of these things are 16 layers. When it's time for it to appear in the show, the dresser will put it on the actor. The actor will wear it, the dresser will pull it off the actor, and it will go back on the rack, and the dresser will bring it back downstairs. Everything will be looked at every day. And of course, everything will be worn every day. So it's the constant wearing of the clothes. Plus, even the handling of the clothes. Like they go on and off the hangers, they go up and down the racks go on the elevator, racks go back and forth. You have constant opportunities for abrasion. The craft of doing wardrobe is indeed, you are dealing with something that has originally been made totally by hand. 10, 12 people have their hands on a dress. There's no mass production here. It is something that can only be done in a one-on-one basis, you and the costume right there.
I know that Alice Gilbert will always be there for every second of every show. So I know they're always going to look good.
Eugene Lee basically created this world that the show now lives in, and he came in with a model.
We made a really big half-inch scale model. It was like that big, that big. We printed the map and had a silk screen made of the map. We were quite pleased with this model.
And the truth is that the set is more or less the model he built.
The big, simple design idea for Wicked is clockwork gears. That seems kind of silly, but it's kind of true.
I remember that my picture of the show, I guess, was kind of much more high-tech. When Eugene brought that set in, it was completely different than what I thought the show was going to look like.
When we were working on it, we took a clock and we tossed it down the steps and busted it all open and took all the gears out of the clock and super glued them into the model. This is what designers have to do.
It instantly felt right. And we all had the same response, and then he was our designer.
They called and offered me the job. So, end of story.
As the big idea for the set design was being developed, it was clear that navigating through the Land of Oz was going to be a challenge.
In a musical, transitions are everything. I mean, you can always make it look like anything. The look is not as important as the transitions. If you can figure out the transitions, the look takes care of itself eventually. I mean, that's really, I know that's true.
How you get from one scene to the other is art, and if you fail at it, then the larger project fails. And so it's definitely been our belief that that has to be carried through. Every transition feels like it was intentional, and I think that allows you as an audience member to relax and enjoy the story, because you know that you're being taken through it in a methodical and safe and artistic way, instead of sort of, oh, here comes the scenery, and hold on to your chair, Mildred. It's like, it all just sort of happens beautifully. It's been a huge part of our development as artists to figure out how to make all of that ballet of motors and humans pulling ropes and stagehands pushing scenery really all come to a close right when it wants to.
With the success of the Broadway production, Wicked took to the road. The next step was providing audiences across the globe with a genuine Broadway experience.
Ever since the Broadway show opened, our responsibility to the design has evolved quite dramatically. So we created something called the design template, of which all Wicked designs are based on.
The design is what we want to replicate everywhere. And so the continuing task of Wicked is to make it work in all of these different buildings, in all of these different countries that were designed by all of these different people for their own purposes. Every time we go to a new theater, a new country, we have different vendors, we have different motors, we have different systems, and so we've really taken it on to learn as much about those systems as we need to learn in order to produce the same production and give it that same kind of feeling that you're in good hands.
We work with the shops in the various countries, whether it's in Germany or in London or in Japan, translating our documents into different languages, helping other people understand what our design intentions are. Everywhere you go, Wicked looks the same and operates the same. And we've kind of, in a sense, branded the way the show looks so that Wicked has a uniform look that's strictly maintained.
It's very special. People love it. And it has a message that seems to resonate. Wicked is in the best of hands.
The person I probably work the closest with in the building here at Wicked is Mary Beth Abel, who's our production stage manager. And she and I talk daily about what we both think the show needs, note-wise. If it's a note for the actors that's specifically acting related, I always go through her.
I would say maintaining the artistic integrity is the most important thing that I do, and then overseeing departments and making sure that we're running as smoothly as possible and that things are maintained to the standard that all the designers have created.
I also work very closely with Tom Widman, who's our production supervisor, who he oftentimes travels with us when I'm working in my associate music supervisor capability to the other companies, because he kind of oversees all of the Wickeds in that same respect.
One of my roles is really as continuity guy, to make sure that the Wicked companies, no matter where they are, look and sound and feel like Wicked. The Broadway company is the baseline, and that all the others look and sound and feel the same. There's small changes that need to be made in each venue. Sometimes the set is a little bit different to make it fit better. Of course, we customize the shows for the cast as well. But at the end of the day, the audience that sees it in Japan or in Holland or in London is seeing the same show that we present on Broadway.
So the stage managers and I work very closely together to try to just keep the show, running at the right temperature.
The most important person in the theater, probably other than the director and the choreographer to the lighting designer, is the stage manager.
On a nightly basis, it takes 3 stage managers to run our show. We have 2 stage managers who are on deck, 1 stage right and 1 stage left, and then we have a stage manager who goes up and calls the show.
The reason that the stage manager calls what we call a light cue or a lighting event is so that she's able to coordinate it with scenery, prop movement, actor movement, the score, the conductor, and light. So all these things happen together, and that all is under the thumb or the switch of one person, and that's the production stage manager.
It's a lot of responsibility. It really is, and it's a responsibility that you have to be focused and concentrated on. And this particular show, it has a number of moving pieces that all happen at the same time, and it's intimidating in the beginning. But once you get comfortable with anything, of course, it's easier to deal with. When you get into a long run like this, it sort of is an ongoing challenge, and every day provides some new thing that we need to deal with. We have a situation in the show where the 2 witches smack each other. And for safety reasons, of course, we don't want them to really smack each other. So it's a stage slap. And in order to make that look like a real slap, you have to rehearse it, especially if you're getting like new people coming in. And again, over time, things can happen where your hand's a little too far away from the shoulder, it's looking fake, that kind of thing. Anytime we have an understudy go on or a standby go in, where we do the fight call ahead of time. And anytime we think it starts to look a little wonky, or sometimes the girls will come in and say, you know what, I'm not comfortable, so we'll do the fight call.
Yes, I do. Good. So do I.
I stage manage from a place where I really trust all of my department heads. I think we're on Broadway. It's the epitome of our craft, and I feel that my crew is the same. Weekly responsibilities deal with watching the show, making sure that everything is running smoothly, making sure that blocking is done correctly, consulting with musical director and the dance captains on a daily basis. And then, of course, there's paperwork that has to be done.
Each production sends a performance report after the show, and so on any given night I'm getting 7 performance reports in my inbox, looking for any issues that have come up, anything that might be percolating in any of the companies that might need future attention, either technical or artistic, or need the resources of the creative team to visit.
And that report involves, some of it is technical, whereby we take temperatures of every, at the top of an act and at the bottom of an act. And, people think temperatures, why are you taking temperatures? We take a temperature and a humidity reading so that we can keep a handle on how many degrees it is in the house and how many degrees it is backstage, in order to keep all of our drops coming in straight, not billowing, and all of our smoke on the stage rather than in the pit or out in the house. On that report, though, of course, it has what the performance number is, and when you're in a long-running show, that's always fascinating, because, once you hit those milestones, like you're 2,000, 2,500, everybody's like, woo!
With 7 productions of Wicked around the world, there's a time on Saturday, there's a 24-hour block on Saturday, when there are 14 shows of Wicked playing around the world. Within 24 hours. And in that same 24 hours, there's only a 90-minute block where there's no Wicked somewhere. So it just speaks to the kind of the broad reach of Wicked around the globe right now, to have 7 productions running. It's all Wicked all the time.
Everybody's here for the common good. Nobody's here to not do their best. It's a fun job, and that's what I love about it.
The story of the dragon has a really rich history, actually, dating back to the early concept model that Eugene brought in when he first met with Joe Mantello.
Wicked, has one big overall clock motif that kind of pulls it together. In the book that this musical is based on, there's a Clock of the Time Dragon, which is kind of described as a kind of pageant wagon that's pushed around from town to town.
And perched on top of this pageant wagon was a leathery and sulfurous dragon that kind of you know, was manipulated through ropes and pulleys like a marionette.
Like a big puppet with stagehand, worked it with ropes and stuff. As soon as I read that, I thought, that's perfect.
We brought in a great collaborator of ours, Bob Flanagan, who Eugene has worked with for many, many years on Saturday Night Live.
One day Eugene stopped me in the hallway at Saturday Night Live and said, might have this little project for you to work on, and started going on about this 40-foot mechanical dragon. He showed me some of the Oz sketches, and he asked me to kind of come up with some kind of huge metallic dragon that made serpentine movements and mouth open and closed and wings flapped. Basically, Eugene came to me and told me that the concept was we saw the machinations behind the Land of Oz.
It's part of a kind of mechanical world. That was kind of my thought. So it fit into that, had, you know, little hinges and little fabric.
Seeing the stagehands over at the side yanking on the ropes, it kind of did two things. It gave us the movement that we wanted, and it also had the look that Eugene was asking for. You get his input, but you also are left alone to help bring your own creative forces into the project, which is a really nice feeling, because you don't always get that.
Collaboration, always the best thing. People said, well, could it smoke a little bit? It's a dragon, after all. Can you have some smoke?
We have an elaborate system of hoses and machines that are housed within the dragon's head and his neck to be able to produce the smoke effects every time the dragon is activated.
The dragon had to be very lightweight, and it also could not clatter and knock. So basically we ended up using a sheet urethane foam that's kind of like that goes on the inside of your coolers and stuff. We glued it together and it was fine. It was white though, so then we ended up putting a styrene coating and fabric on top of it and painting it to look like metal. The whole dragon only weighs about 40 pounds.
The importance of the dragon for us really is that it does start the show. It's the downbeat of the music, it's the first visual effect.
When I first saw it moving on stage, it really did kind of all come together. I was like, yeah, okay, I understand it now.
The dragon was used very successfully. I mean, it's playful in the beginning, but nobody wanted it. They didn't want it originally. I don't know why. I can't remember why. I remember they weren't too keen on the dragon. They love it now, actually, I'm told. The Oz head, yes. First of all, it was like, what does the Oz head look like? You know, there was the Oz head in the books, you know. We once again turned to Bob Flanagan, who worked on the dragon, for the Oz head.
Eugene stopped me in the hall and talked to me about the possibility of making the Wonderful Wizard of Oz head for the throne room. There again, he said, I want you to go back and I want you to look at the original drawings of the Oz head.
Bob made 6 or 7 Oz heads at least, little models, of different ones.
About a half dozen maquettes of what I thought the head should look like.
I have one sitting in my studio at home. I don't know which one it is.
Looking at the construction of the old, with the Tin Man, how he was constructed, kind of came up with a concept of what this Oz head would look like if it was built in Oz.
It's operated by the stagehand behind with the smoke and lighting effects accompanying it.
The mouth is by basically a bike brake handle cabled to the mouth so you can open and close it.
With hand grips and little pulleys.
The eyes can go left and right. You can blink eyes with another brake cable. The eyebrows can flip up and down with this, actually a bass drum kick pedal designed by Bob Flanagan, who put this together really with a lot of imagination.
And it also has various effects built into it. The eyes have LED lights that can change to any color. There's smoke that emanates out of the floor of the wizard apparatus that allows it to be lit in a very scary fashion.
The head is supposed to be terrifying, as we remember from the original movie, being terrified by that big green head that we saw.
The first thing that I had to do was get used to which part of the body do I control with which hand and how do I coordinate that, and learn it with my body. How do I make it look alive with the movements that I have available to me? That's the fun part of it.
The actor who plays the wizard is delivering his lines through a microphone standing behind the wall prior to his dramatic entrance.
PJ, the wizard, I've had this joke since I started that I'm channeling him through me to the puppet and we're like acting as one.
We really talk about him setting me up with that head, because if I'm going, I am Oz, and he goes, I am Oz, it doesn't mean anything, you know? So we really got on our wavelength together, and the head is an extension of me, and it's the first thing the audience sees of me. And that has to make it. That has to score.
Let me talk you through what the movements would be when the wizard is actually recognizing Elphaba.
I am Oz! I am Oz the Great and Terrible! Who are you, and why do you seek me?
To realizing that it's someone he wants to know and befriend.
Oh, is that you, Elphaba? I didn't realize.
So it goes from looking straight ahead with dead straight eyes and forceful speech to the turning of the head, turning of the eyes, and the surprised eyebrows up with my right foot. After a while, that just becomes part of your body.
I do believe that we have added to the mystique of the wizard character. Even when he's not moving on stage, even when the wizard is out in front and his alter ego is sitting silent, he's there. The Mr. Hyde, if you will, of the wizard is still there, present in the background.
It just becomes part of what I need to do without even thinking about it. Operating the Oz head is about the closest I've come to performing than any time else in my prop man career.
From the very beginning of Wicked, there are projections happening. You know, as a part of the curtain warmer, we've got Emerald City kind of twinkling with lights to augment what the scenery is already doing.
The design of Wicked evolved really sort of organically, and it started in San Francisco. It was a notion, again, that Joe Mantello had about sort of being able to really create specific magical moments within the context of the evening.
The initial ideas are dialogues with the director always, you know, and the whole design team, and let's go through the whole show and talk about what we're looking for.
So we really had some pretty intense meetings about it, and also just sometimes of just spontaneous idea. Joe would just throw something out and say, can you make me this for this moment?
We were in San Francisco in the out-of-town tryout, and I was really struggling as the designer with, and everything we were creating with ones and zeros on a computer just felt very digital. One evening, the animators I was working with had the great idea to go to Home Depot and just get a bunch of supplies. And we got wood chips, dry ice from the props people, and a confetti cannon from the props people. And back into our studio we went and spent the entire evening basically just playing. We videotaped the wood chips swirling around. We played with the dry ice for hours. And what we discovered by going with actual objects and going with organic materials as opposed to digital, we were able to then, you know, have that aha moment of, yes, okay, this is how the projections need to be built. I like projections when they blend and collage with lighting. I seem to remember very clearly with Ken that I thought of it as us learning how to dance together.
But we would just really have conversations about very specific moments, specific transitions within the show. A transition is a fancy word from getting from scene to scene seamlessly and elegantly through music, choreography, lighting.
During the classroom scene,
Elphaba has just cast a spell on the classroom. She takes off.
And there's that great crazy music, and the choreography is this wonderful sort of electrified bodies and robotics and chaos.
The students are actually stuck or seem not to be paralyzed where they're standing.
At that moment, we're using some of the dry ice we shot on in the studio, and we're kind of running it very fast and frenetically.
It's all in time and rhythm with the score, the underscoring.
And at that point, we're kind of tumbling the smoke upstage, trying to blend with the movement of these actors who are kind of frenetically moving about stage.
From that sort of activity or choreography that Wayne Salanto created, we then build that into the transition that takes us into the poppy field.
That dancing well together is what ultimately created what has been described by many, many people as a blending of those two worlds, so much so that you don't know what's lighting and what's projections. And are there projections? And there's been numerous times people said, there are projections in the show? And I have to say, great, I succeeded. You know, egotistically, I say, you know, I blended so well that you can't even tell I'm there, but great, because if they're, if they leave the theater whistling the projections, I have failed miserably as a designer.
Chick Silber, our special effects designer, has been around a long, long time. He's seen it all come and go, and he's got a great perspective on the kinds of things that work and the kinds of things that don't work. And he was able to bring a lot to the design of Wicked.
I work in both the theatrical industry and the circus industry. Whether we do 8 or 15 productions a week, performances a week, it has to work every time. You can't say, oh, that trick worked yesterday.
Part of his design was the ability to really cover the stage in either smoke or fog.
The smoke or atmosphere layer within Wicked, the design of Wicked, is very important because not only does it reveal sort of the beams and angles and sharp angles and color within the light as a texture, it also masks and disguises certain things for the more magical parts of the play.
Haze, smoke, and fog, which are all somewhat different, and in some cases it comes under a heading atmospherics. In Wicked, we're using all three intermixed, and the cueing of all of that becomes quite elaborate.
The opening image of Wicked is the introduction of the population, and what the smoke does for us in that moment is just creates mystery and expectation and intrigue, and really until Glinda arrives, we're out of focus until she really crystallizes us and begins telling us about this journey we're about to go on.
There are, I think, 13 or 14 separate smoke systems on this show.
And it all sort of mixes together to sort of blend in different ways, if you will. There's a low-lying idea that really sort of gives us a sense of water sometimes, or mist-covered landscape.
There's also stuff that you don't know that's Chicks, like the torches.
It was decided that we would not have real flame in the handheld torches for the witch hunters, and created a battery-operated light fan silk handheld that we use 3 of amongst the other paraphernalia that the witch hunters carry.
The monkey rope was his.
The top of the show, where the 3 monkeys come to get things established, one of them climbs down a device that's known as a web, which is actually custom made in our shop device that goes back centuries from the circus industry. It's a cotton-filled cotton webbing that allows someone to get a good grip. It looks like a rope, but it's specific to be able to be both safe and easy to climb. Almost all of the devices we make, whether it's a torch or a broom or a bubble machine, are actually made in our shop by hand, the way we did them and the way others did them many generations before us.
He was able to bring a lot to the table and add a lot of layers to the show, so it's all about being able to support the director and the design team and their vision of what we're trying to put out there.
So I enjoy that challenge, and I am probably one of the luckiest people you know, because over my career in this industry, I've had a great amount of success with this stuff all working.
The lighting design for Wicked is sort of really based off of old school craft and technology, and then really, really specifically focused on the storytelling, telling the audience exactly where to look. You know, one of the ways I sort of did this with Wicked is sort of came up with this notion of viewing this world, this Ozian world, maybe through a crystal ball, or maybe through looking down into a jeweler's display cabinet and seeing these 2 beautiful gems, these 2 beautiful characters, and just knowing that the light had to emanate from the story that they were telling. After I've got these ideas in my head, you take all that information and you begin to distill it down into how can I achieve these ideas with lighting effects, or develop a light plot so I can have the flexibility in the theater to give a director or a choreographer anything they might need to help create their composition. The light plot is really sort of nothing more than really an architect's drawing.
The lighting plot is the physical representation of where the lights hang in space.
So if it's my job to design the lighting for the show, it's another person's job to implement and engineer, technically engineer the lighting for the show. And that fell to Brendan Quigley, our head electrician, and the original production electrician on the show, Bob Fairback.
Some details about a light plot. There are multiple plates, so multiple drawings of Ken's design. So one plate could be just the overhead electrics, for example. And all of those plates have some specific information that we need, including the position, the type of lighting fixture, the gel color that goes in front of it, and just some numbers. We have approximately 650 lighting fixtures with a focus node attached, which means we have to know where it goes.
Basically, once the light plot is in the air, all the light plot does from that point on is become a record of where everything lives. But for example, when we go to another venue, we use that light plot as a base to then develop the next show.
When the London production was put together, it was the first time that the entire original creative team came together again for the mounting of a new production. Some of the things that they discovered during that process were new to Wicked. The set was outfitted with a green LED array, which looked terrific, and our producers and creative team liked it so much that we decided we wanted to bring it back to the other companies.
So these green LEDs that you see in all the portals, they weren't original to this particular set. But the great thing about working on a Wicked is we can continue to reinvent certain parts of it, which is really wonderful, and just continue to enhance the audience's experience. To be part of Wicked is really, for me, I'm sure it will be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I think what I love most about Wicked is watching the audience, and you get this thunderous applause. The first time that happened in San Francisco, I was literally like blown away. As a theater artist, that's what we do. That's the payoff.